So just for anybody that doesn't know, I'm Creag Munroe. I'm the founder and the editor of Elegant Literature, and I'm here with Irene Rebello, who is the winner of the Inescapable Infatuation contest, $3,000 grand prize with your story Lifelines. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful story. I'm so happy to have you here today to talk about it. So can you, just to start off, can you tell me a little bit, tell me about your story, tell anybody watching this kind of what your story is about and maybe what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, so Lifelines, we start off with this unnamed character digging through soil to try to find something to eat. We're in this kind of dystopian, apocalyptic landscape where it's like there's no trees and everything is gray and horrible, and there's thunder and storms everywhere. And we follow this character as she makes this decision to split this one piece of food with someone, and they kind of regret it, but we see it through the eyes of this ghost. So that's kind of
I thought that was so cool at the beginning of the story. And I think I mentioned that in the comments that I made in the magazine, but it was like, I was confused. I didn't know what was going on, who the ghost was. We were talking about sort of being inside them and then touching them. And
yeah, I got that. Everyone I gave it to 3 people to read before I sent it in to get feedback, and all of them were so confused. They didn't all they could say was I'm so confused, I don't know what's happening. They all read it 3 times. But, I kind of like that. Keeping people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I figured it out about a third of the way through, somewhere in there. You get specific. You're like, I died, and then now we know it's a ghost. But it kind of you kind of get hints leading up to that, and you kind of I think. I just thought that was really cool. How did you come up with sort of that idea? Was that inspired by something else that you've read or seen somewhere, or?
Well, one of my favorite subgenres, I guess, is Shape of Water, that kind of human and mythical creature kind of relationship. One of my favorites is The Pisces by Melissa Broder, which is about this woman who kind of has a relationship with merman. And it's kind of weird and trippy and gross kind of, but I kind of I love that type of story. And there's a few exceptions. It's always the human falling in love with the mythical creature, and it's always an allegory love and other things. But I kind of wanted to do different. What is about a ghost, falling in love with a human, or Little Mermaid, a mermaid falling in love with a human. And when I saw the prompt, Inescapable Infatuation, the first thing I thought of was unrequited love. But, not just unrequited with the Lifelines. It's always forcibly unrequited, there's no
they don't even know about it.
You
can't record.
She can't even haunt her. They just don't know that she's there. And it's so depressing. And I kind of love that, I've wanted it to be super depressing and kind of weird. So
and it was almost beautiful in the way that they had, they loved them so much, but it was haunting in that they couldn't express that, couldn't even be seen. Exactly. Such a lonely existence. Now, something about it struck me is that you didn't just have it as a ghost, sort of a standard ghost that we have. This ghost can read minds. Which was that. Did you do that just as you were writing it sort of happened, or did you plan for it to be that way?
It just kind of happened. Actually, I hate to say this, but everything about it just kind of happened. I didn't have a clear idea was what I was doing. It was the first thing I thought of was the person digging through soil. And then as I was writing it, I was okay, so they're gonna give it to him, and that's gonna happen, and she's gonna think that, and I don't know, whatever I came up with, I just wrote down, and if I took it out, if I edited it or whatever, it just came later to me.
Mm-hmm. Did you do a lot of editing for this story? Was it different at the beginning when you started writing it and you cut a lot and changed it, or is it did it come out a lot how you originally put it down on paper?
I changed more of the ending. Like the last line wasn't there before. When I gave it to the people to read, and like the last bit where, I mean, kind of a spoiler, but I guess when the person kind of questions their decision, like that wasn't there before. And I added that because I felt like there wasn't a lot of conflict. Like the story just ended like very abrupt.
They weren't remorseful. They're like, I did the right thing. I hate the root. Shared vector.
Like they didn't really care. They just like, okay, like that happened. So and the story it's like, okay, no, like they need to kind of like have a consequence, Like I added more of the ending before, but the beginning kind of stayed the same throughout. No, I lied. The beginning, the roots that they found, it was kind of alive. Like I said that it was alive and like he moved. Like I still left a bit of the movement there to kind of like make it trippy, but like he was actually alive. That's
one of the first question I have on my list here of some questions about your story is the root alive? Because you were talking about it like wrapping itself around and going at the pace of a snail, and that's kind of creepy imagery, especially when we weren't really sure, at least I wasn't when I was reading the story, that this world was like so blasted and post-apocalyptic. Like now I'm thinking maybe this root was irradiated or something and alive, or is it just
because I think about like when I think about the apocalypse, I kind of think like things really changing the way they are now. Like when I think of, I know plants are like alive, maybe like they have like their own way of being alive, but like maybe there wasn't like a nuclear apocalypse. Maybe like, I mean, I didn't really specify.
You're not even clear on what happened in the background.
I kind of like not knowing too. Like I kind of like letting people make their own assumptions about it. So like I say like maybe it was alive because like I kind of want people to make their own assumptions about it. Like I don't really want to like say it, so like that's why I kind of like the way I keep messing up like calling the character they and she, because like in my head it's a she, but also like it could be a boy or it could be like
anything. I really like that style of leaving it sort of vague and leaving, because like if you just explicitly tell everything, it can be a little bit more stilted, whereas the question of is the root alive, or is it just the perception of it, or is it just like it happened to fall into that, and the way you're describing it is kind of eerie, a little bit creepy, a little bit gross, makes it more interesting to me.
Yeah, but I will say my inspiration for that, the root was like a sweet potato for like the color and shape, but also like those like carnivore plants where you put like I don't remember
like the Venus flytraps, like
exactly that. So like a mix of that, if you want to like really know.
That was another question I had. Was the root supposed to be like a real vegetable was I supposed to recognize it? Because I didn't. I was kind of like, maybe it's like a turnip that's been irradiated or something, but was it? So it wasn't. It was supposed to be a sweet potato sort of combined with it.
I imagine like the outside is kind of like sweet potato, like the purple one, but like I said that the root has like goo inside, so that's not really sweet potato. So it's what I really want it to be, like whatever.
There was a lot of things about your story that was like sort of unsettling, but like it was like weirdly beautiful, and especially in the way you describe it and the words that you used. Like I found a lot of your prose fairly lyrical, almost a little bit poetical in places, but you juxtapose that with like some unsettling imagery, creepy things like the root. So I thought that was really cool. How does this piece stack up to what you normally write? Are you normally sort of a fantasy writer? Or are you normally what do you normally like to write?
Well, I love making up like longer fantasy stories, but when it comes to short stories, I'm a very like literary fiction kind of writer, like family stories, like stories about love and relationships and stuff. So like most of the short stories I have before this one are like that kind of thing. Like I love writing about families and like family dynamics, so I have a lot of those. And again, like unrequited love and like weird like romantic relationship dynamics, I love that too. But yeah, like when it comes to longer fiction, I think I do like a bit of like fantasy stuff. But
Are you working on anything longer right now?
maybe like I have this idea, but I'm a really bad planner, and honestly, I don't really know how to write plots. So it's kind of hard to write a fantasy book because like plot is like one of the
It's pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, but I have an idea. I have an idea. I have like a couple scenes that I want to write, but right now I'm kind of focusing more on short stories anyway. So I'm for that anyway.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about you and sort of tell me about the history of you. What got you started with writing? Is this a new thing, or have you been writing since you could walk? Tell me about that.
Like, I'm a person that has a lot of phases. So I remember when I was like in middle school, I wrote this short story for this assignment. And I was like, oh my God, it's the best thing I've ever written. It was so good. I was so proud of it. I showed it to everyone. I loved it so much. And then I kind of went on that for a while. I had a ton of ideas for books, but I never wrote them, and stuff like that. And then I kind of stopped for a little bit. I was really into animation and drawing for a little bit, recently. But then around 2018, maybe, I kind of had this idea for a book. But it's kind of bad thinking about it now, but writing again, because of that. And then it kind of just went on, and now I'm here. So
now you're focusing writing. And am I right that you won a Reedsy contest or something like that? Or placed?
Yeah. So Reedsy is like this community. It's a blog kind of site for writers to converse with each other. And they do these weekly contests, and they say they send you 5 prompts, and then you kind of just write whatever you want. When I did it, the price was $50. I think it's higher now, sure, but I won one.
Congratulations!
Thank you. I sent a couple more, but they didn't really they didn't win, but. That's fine.
Now you're just getting used to winning contests, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just going to be normal for you.
I hope, honestly.
What was the story like that you won that contest with? Was it fantasy as well, or was it more of the literary fiction? What was it about?
No, it was about family, and it was mostly about it was just about the father, mother, and daughter kind of relationship, and how they kind of mix and mash together. Yeah, I'm proud of the story. I think it's pretty good, but I don't know.
You should be. If it's winning contests, it's got to be pretty good, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know if I should be saying this, but I kind of like the other stories that I have, because I wrote a lot of them and I sent it, and then I kind of deleted them because I wasn't proud of them. But I kept some of them there. They didn't win, but I'm kind of more proud of those. There is a fantasy one there, which is all about a boy. Kind of gets an encounter with a mermaid, so that mythological human thing again. But yeah, most of those are literary fiction kind of.
All right, I'm sensing a trend with you.
Yeah,
supernatural romances, pan species or whatever. That's great.
Exactly.
Walk me through your writing process, because you said earlier that you just sort of wrote down Lifelines. Is that normal for you? Do you normally plan anything out, or how do you go about approaching a new short? So if you get the idea in your head, how do you go about getting it out and writing it down?
Yeah, so usually with short stories, I can write them really quickly. The one I wrote with Lindsay, I wrote it down in one day, and I didn't even edit it and just sent it. So that's kind of
I hope nobody that lost to you sees this video. That's
I really should have edited it. I know that now, but back then I was no, whatever, just send it. I had no hope of I completely forgot about it actually. But anyway, I wrote that. But with short stories, I usually write them really quickly, and I don't really think about it. With Lifelines, I actually wrote it fairly slow for my pace. I think it took a week, 2 weeks maybe. It was feedback and stuff. With my longer books, I kind of, my longer stories, I guess I should say, it's a longer process because I have to think about plots and come write a series, I have to think about like, how it will translate into the next book and the next book and the next book. So
have you written a series before?
No, I haven't. That's a
but you're planning too, so
exactly. So like exactly, because like with a book, like if you are really planning on having a series, like you shouldn't really just write the first book and then like do whatever with the second, right? You have to like plan out the story throughout how many books you want to have. So I'm kind of bad at that. Like I love outlining actually, but I suck at doing it. And with the story that I have that I'm thinking about right now, it's like the beginning is kind of hard to like start with because I have like this really big action that I need to take place like right as the story starts, but I also can't have this like big time jump. Like like it's kind of complex. So
it's hard to factor the things in sometimes that you like. You have the things that you need to have in there, and how do you slot them together to not only make the most sense but also be the most dramatic, intense, conflict filled. Keep it paced well for the reading. So it's I agree with you that outlining is great for that, and having a plan, especially if you're going to go into a multi-book series, is really important so that you actually keep the story tight and don't wander around and drag it down.
I feel like especially with fantasy, like you can't just like have a decision that doesn't affect anything else. Like you can't just make a character like develop powers and then just never talk about it again. Like and so I'm having kind of a hard time like picturing that, and also because there's kind of a like mystery element to it. Like I'm not a big mystery reader. Like I love thrillers, but I don't really tend to pick them up that often. So I think I'm gonna have to like read some to kind of figure out the structure because I really haven't read.
Because you've got something that you want to include in yours, but you're not sure how you should how to do it. Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna have to reread some like fantasy really focused on plot too, because like I just can't do it. Just having sort of a hard time doing it. So I think that's why I'm like tending to write short fiction now, because it's just like for me.
Well, I mean, clearly in your short fiction, you're very good at sort of focusing on sort of the things that are immediately happening while giving context to the larger world. That's one of the things I really liked about Lifelines, is that you're so focused on, the immediate problems of being hungry and being in a community that's dying and the problems between the people and the love. But somehow you've woven in all these little extra bits that show how like the expanse of the world and the problems that you're facing. So I mean, like you used the description of cooking the root, where the narrator said she should have brought it to George, and then there's a paragraph where you describe how George would have prepared the root, and it's how he would have prepared it to feed like 40 people with one root. And even though all you're doing is describing this one small thing, like cooking a root, what you're doing is showing the greater problem of people are starving and they're hungry and food is scarce. And so I really like that with your work, as you do that several times, as you focus on these very small, intimate details that give context to the world and world build. So I think that would serve you very well in longer works as you sort of weave that in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have to say, like I put that in because I love like reading about food. So like how food and stuff. So I was like, oh yeah, just add that in.
Do you read George R.R. Martin?
Like I started it one time, but I kind of got distracted and like didn't finish it.
If you like reading about food, he has so many food descriptions. Some of his some of the critics of his work, and not just Game of Thrones, other things he's written as well. Some of the critics have said like it reads more like a menu than it does a story.
Because I'm gonna have to now. I love it.
He believes that like food is such an important part of our life, and the taste and the smell. It signifies culture, and it really can immerse you in a scene as well if you give that sort of vivid detail. And he really likes the food, so he kind of focuses on that. And I mean, some people say it goes too far, but some people love it. And I've got a Game of Thrones cookbook on my shelf because the food was so well described that people were able to make a cookbook, and they found, based on his descriptions, they found the recipes that would be kind of the same in medieval times and made, which is pretty cool. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that. I'm gonna have to like look it up now. I kind of love that.
I mean, if you're interested in food and you're writing, that's a great place to start, in my opinion.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna look it up later. That's so cool.
Tell me, how do you come up with your ideas? Do you have a process for coming up with ideas, or you have a note on your phone, or you just walk down the street and it just hit you in the face?
Like a lot of times, I just kind of think of something and I'm like, okay, I'll just like build it off of that. So like with Lifelines, it was like this image of this person, digging around on soil looking for something. I was like, okay, I'll just like start writing down and just kind of like became that. Like I'm talking about a lot about this idea that I had with fantasy, but like I'm kind of building this entire like thing and like book around this one scene that I had an idea for, like no
Okay.
context. It's actually like, yeah, so it's like extra hard because of that. But I feel like, like this short story that I'm planning on writing next also came from this like one like scene that I just randomly got in my mind. So I'm kind of like that, like I have one random idea and just build an entire context around that.
That's really cool. I mean, yeah, and that's a great way to like sort of layer it in there and build it so it's all
Actually,
kind of around the same sort of theme or scene.
I mean, it works for me. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's all that matters,
right,
right? And I mean,
yeah,
that's how it
exactly.
works. You've won contests, you're getting your work published and out there. So, I mean, just keep doing more of the same, I think, basically
Exactly.
at that point. Um, And so, that was another question I had about Lifelines and about your writing in general. Specifically about Lifelines, are any of the characters based on real people, like is it Hector or the nameless protagonist? Are they George V? Are those people in any way pulled from real people in your life, or how do you come up with your characters?
Not really, but kind of every character kind of has this like trope that I like. Kind of, like Hector. I mean, talking about Game of Thrones again. I love, like man kind of adopts child trope with
Mm-hmm.
fantasy. I forgot his name, but the kind of guy that helps Arya in Game of Thrones. I'm not
Oh
sure.
yeah, Jacqueline,
I think so.
Jacqueline
Yeah.
Hogar.
With like Arya, like I love that trope so much. And so with Hector, it was kind of like a lesser bit because Hector, is not very not described to be very like buff and like strong and stuff. It's kind of like weak and
Yeah.
frail. So kind of like so it's kind of an extent of that trope, which I love. Again with the narrator, like a trope of like paranormal romance that I love. V kind of has this that like like little dorky kid that very common in sci-fi. I think the like researcher like
Yeah.
wears glasses and stuff like
That's what I
wearing
got
like
from
goggles and stuff like kind of that. So it's kind of just like that, like things that I love seeing in other fiction kind of translated to the world that I built, so they can like fit in and like squeeze very tightly, like out of work. The like unnamed protagonists I don't really have much, but probably because like I don't spend a lot of time on them anyway. Like I feel like I don't really describe them too much. They're kind of just like the object of
Mhm.
the
Their actions are
love.
just sort of
So
making a story, but it's not.
exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I like did do something longer, they'd probably be like the kind of independent, like strong woman, like whatever, like kind of that. But also like actually, I love the trope where like a strong woman kind of has like a soft spot for like this one specific person. So kind of like that with Hector as like a parental figure, kind of like that.
So you're kind of using tropes to build your characters rather than like real people, family members, and friends, and things like that.
Exactly.
That makes.
Like I don't tend to really like base characters around people that I know. Like maybe one or two traits. Like I don't know. I think people like
It's a good way to avoid offending your friends and family, is not base characters on them.
yeah,
Then they get annoyed when
true.
they do wrong
It's very
things.
true.
Yeah. Another question is you mentioned the trope of sort of the man adopting a child, or the adult adopting a child kind of trope. But then a couple times in the story, I've got the sense that like the love has love has changed. Like you mentioned Hector parts with the protagonist with like a kiss. Is their relationship evolved into something more romantic as they've gotten older, or is that like a kiss on the forehead or something? I wasn't clear
Yeah.
on what. And again, with the narrator and the protagonist, like it kind of felt like and I think I mentioned this in my comments, is that they're obviously old, ancient. They've been wandering around for a long time, and they found the protagonist as a child. And Explosion of Love kind of makes me think of, they found, an abandoned child. Obviously, everyone's going to have a huge soft spot for that kind of thing. But then they're talking about they're jealous of Hector, which could just be jealous of Hector's ability to interact with them or like express their love, but they're talking about being a girl and being pulled up together. So I was wondering if I kind of read into that wrong, like maybe it's being romantic, or did you mean any of that? Well, what was, I want answers.
No, with Hector, I do think it's kind of like a more parental kind of like kind of like a grandfather maybe, because he's like old and like kind of weak, and I imagine the unnamed protagonist to be like kind of like a teenager, maybe like 17, that like around that time. So I think more like parental, like a little kiss on the cheek.
Yeah, okay.
With the ghost, I do think like in my head it was kind of a love story, kind of like a scary love story, because it's kind of like weird to have like a ghost obsessed with you or something. Like I wouldn't like that, but with I kind of did think it was kind of like a love story, because I think in my head too, like with the ghost, like I imagine she died young, kind of like maybe like 15, and she never really got time to like develop of her. And so like she met her as a baby, which like could be weird for some people, and kind of is like.
Well, I mean, sure, but it when you're a 300-year-old ghost, like
exactly,
it changes.
But like exactly, like it could very well have started as kind of like what happened with Hector, but kind of grew into that, because I mean, I imagine like you're stuck as like 15-year-old, like completely alone, like the first like other 15-year-old you're gonna see, like you're gonna become obsessed with them, like unimaginable.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I did kind of have that, like, but it's kind of like, like you're 15 and like I don't know, your brother has a best friend and you're kind of obsessed with him. So like it's kind of romantic, but it's also kind of like just because it happens, you gotta express yourself some way. So you just kind of pick this person that seems more mature, like seems like what you want to be, like what you want to have when you're older, like kind of that idea. But
yeah, and there's no need to have it spelled out, like it have to be explicit. It doesn't have to be one or the other, because I would imagine for a dead person walking around with watching humanity, like they're going to be very confused and conflicted themselves. Exactly. They're not going to know what they feel. So there's no reason that we as the reader should understand that this is how it is. And I actually thought that added to it. And
like with the ghosts, I kind of wanted to make it like to make them like really unstable, kind of like, so like there's this one part of it where the ghost is kind of like hanging around in areas like this. Yeah. When they start thinking about Hector finding them, she kind of like drops to the ground, like I imagine like a very feral kind of idea, like
skitter away.
Yeah, like exactly, like kind of like a threatened animal, because like it's just like why are you thinking about him? Like I know like knows they don't like know she's there, she's very conscious of that fact, but at the same time like she can't help just like be super jealous and possessive, like why don't you know that I found you first, kind of like that. So yeah, like very unstable, like
I can imagine it'd just be awful to be in that situation, to be just totally unnoticed, like you'd be going insane. I would, I think.
God, I can't even imagine.
Another question is, so you mentioned that there's no food coming in the fall, like this route's probably the last of it. So these people, they're screwed, it's over for them. Is this like the last few people dying off on the planet?
I mean, I imagine they could like travel, kind of like
it's better over the hill.
Yeah, imagine like I imagine they kind of like they're in this place just because they found this like place they could like be in, this place long like large enough that they could all fit inside, where like there's a storm coming, so they'll get like rained on. But like I mean, think about like The Walking Dead, for example. Like when one of their safe houses is swarmed with zombies, they kind of just pack it up and leave, go somewhere else. So I imagine that's kind of what they would do. Like once the storm passes, I think it's okay for them to leave. They'll just pack it up and
there's no food there, so they got to get out of there.
Exactly. Like I don't imagine they like just sit down and like die there. Like I like to think try to find somewhere else.
Well, at least try, I think, for sure.
Yeah, at least try.
You're human.
If you don't, like, at least you tried, right?
I really did like how you ended it though on like there's no resolution to this problem. Like you didn't there's no real hope for there's nothing that gave them a specific hope for the future. It just ends on this nice positive, it's almost like a very positive note of the ghost saying, like, reaffirming their love for the protagonist, but it's still juxtaposed against this bleak future. They still ate the last root. They're still kind of a bad person, and there's no resolution coming. And I thought that you pulled that off very well. It was very interesting sort of feeling that it gave to me at the end, where I was sort of a bit positive, but also like still kind of sad. It was a complicated emotion that I think you pulled off very well.
But I just thought of it. Actually, I'm sorry. I just thought of it. But like, if there's a storm coming, like maybe it'll just like be a little rain, and maybe the trees will grow again. Like,
maybe there'll be more roots.
Yeah, like maybe the rain will help. Like, who knows, actually. So just to leave someone
do you have
happy.
Plans to expand this into like more, like write more in this world, pick up these characters later, do you have any plans to make this more, or just are you going to leave it here?
Like, not right now, then maybe. Like, I think maybe I just like to make it like a longer short story, maybe, instead of like a whole book. Like maybe like, I don't know, some like more 1,000 words, maybe, just to give more text, really, because I kind of left it vague just because I like leaving it vague also, but just because, like it's kind of restrictive, which I like how small it is, but also, with like a fantasy world, it's like an apocalypse. I don't really have like time to really get in all of it. So maybe I'll continue the story. Maybe like I'll write them up and try to find somewhere else with food. Maybe
I'd read more of it for sure.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. But I don't really have any plans to. I mean, I'm happy with it. I love short stories that kind of end very openly.
And with short stories, often you do need that, because it is kind of a snippet of a larger thing happening. Very rarely is it an entirely standalone conclusion, especially with 2,000 words is a very short story.
Yeah,
I think you were like very close to right on 2002, weren't you? You were right up there,
yeah,
I remember.
Like 3 weeks left, I think. like one of my favorite short stories is a very long story, but the ending is very open, like on purpose. It's like it's a story about a life ceremony, because I read this book called Life Ceremony by Sayaka Murata, which is a Japanese author that I love. And her new short story collection, there's a story about, it's very gruesome. So, like, I'm sorry. It's like,
it'll be okay.
It's like a couple of that. But it's a story, it's called Life Ceremony. And it's about, when people die, they kind of, eat the flesh of the body, like the ceremony, kind of like a funeral. But also there's kind of like, it's so weird, I'm sorry. There's like this mating ritual that happens during the ceremony where like people are, like, they tell people, so, like, like, hook up with someone, so like when someone dies, there's more lives to come. It's not like this thing. And the ending, like, I won't describe it because, like, also spoilers, but it's very gruesome. The ending is like so open. Like, it opens up so many possibilities and like so many different things that could happen, and it kind of leaves off on a hopeful note, like a lot more than mine did. But like, I love that. Like, I was very inspired by this story, I think, because I loved it so much. Like, the whole collection is great, but I love open endings in short fiction. Like, most of the times I'd rather have like a really vague ending than like very like solid, like this will happen, then this happened, and then kind of thing.
Nice to have your imagination sort of be able to take over, wonder what's going to happen. You can write, it's almost like write your own ending for the reader.
Exactly. Like, I love when authors kind of like leave so much open to like you to interpret it however you want to. Like, I love that. I think that's quite kind of why I left it so vague. Like, even the people telling me like it's so confusing, like I didn't get anything. I was like, great, that's what I want. Like, I want make up whatever you want to make up. Like,
Well, I think that shows through in your writing.
No, I think that was a compliment, honestly. So.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely. What's your writing process like? Like, do you write? I mean, I'm not sure where you are right now, but it looks like it might be some sort of office with a lot of books behind you.
Yeah.
Like, do you write at your desk, at your house, in a coffee shop? What's your process like?
Like I tend to write at just odd times. Like it's not my office, my dad's office actually, but when I'm, with it just depends. Like sometimes I write on my phone, sometimes I just write on my desktop or my laptop, or like whatever I want. Really, it's I don't often write on my by hand because I have horrible handwriting and my hand don't write too much. But it's usually like on a computer, like a keyboard. But I also can like research things because sometimes I like forget what things are called, so I have to like look it up or like oh my god, I search for like so many synonyms like all the time. And like tree synonym like leaves or like something whatever. But yeah, like I usually stay at home anyway. But like I don't know if I'm like hit a burst of inspiration, I'll just take out my phone, like Google Docs, and just type.
And how do you keep all that together? Writing on different mediums at different times. How do you use Google Docs? Is that?
Yeah, I just use Google Docs, and I have like this like with my longer short story. Well, not my short story. Sorry, the fantasy story that I have like 5 files for it. I have like a file for like name ideas, or like I have this like file for finished chapters, and then I have like this file for like random like sentences or quotes or scenes that I just don't use it entirely, but just like write down like I don't know 1,000 words like on the bus or something, and then when I get home I like finish it. It's kind of messy. It's messy.
But you're writing when inspiration hits and when creativity sort of has you in its throes, which is definitely a good time to be doing it, rather than sort of sitting on the idea and 3 hours later trying to muster up that creative energy again. You kind of
like sometimes
when it comes to you.
Exactly. Sometimes I just open my phone and like type like one quote, and it's like with no context, like no idea. Just, he said that, like like whatever, like a piece of dialogue that like has no place in the story. But like I'll like fix that up.
I'll find a place for it.
Somehow. Yeah, exactly. Like yeah, that's kind of my process. But I do usually like stay at home. Like I don't usually tend to go outside to try and find somewhere to write. I probably should maybe it'd be good for me, but. Right now it's usually just in my room.
Do you ever sit down for longer periods of time, like 2 or 3 hours, to sort of like actually like work, or is it very scattered still all the time?
It kind of changes because I don't really have like a set routine right now because I'm in college, so my classes always like change schedule, or like sometimes I have like 2 hours free or like no hours free, and I'm like sitting on my computer all day. But like when I'm on vacation, when I'm on break, sometimes I like to just like separate a time to write. I used to wake up at like 6 a.m. when I was like completely was sleeping at like 9 p.m. I would just wake up like 6 and eat an apple and just like write until like my brain got tired, and I just like went on my phone for the rest of the day. But when right now I don't really have a scheduled time, but I just try to do whatever I can right now, because especially college, I'm exhausted all the time, so like I don't really have an inspiration right now. But when it comes, I'll just write it down and wait when I have time to just really sit down.
Fantastic. So I have a totally kind of off-topic, different question for you. Is there any kind of product that you've bought that's sort of less than $100 in the last few months that's really impacted your life? And that could be in terms of writing. That might have helped you there, or just in life in general. I always like to ask this in building a little, list of products that really help that are affordable for people.
Can I say a book? Like probably a book.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Like I actually, like I have it here right now. I'm sorry. Like this book is like a little penguin. I love classics, like the little penguin classics. This is Matilda by Mary Shelley. I love Mary Shelley. She's the author of Frankenstein.
Yep.
I bought these little books and I just love them so much, and it brings me such joy. And I'm just like, I have like a stack of them right here that I bought to celebrate actually that I won the contest.
That's a great celebration of winning a writing contest. There's more books. I like that.
Exactly. Like Mary Shelley is such an inspiration to me because I love like her writing style so much. And like I just love Frankenstein. This is like another one of her books, but Frankenstein in particular, like I love that book so much. and like the writing style is one that I connect with so much. Like I'm obsessed with her, but like that, I guess.
That's great. No, that's a great answer. That's definitely a great answer. And another one is, if I were to send you in the future, maybe just a year, what's your ideal, like, what's your dream outcome there? Do you want to be an author full time? Is that your goal? I actually I didn't ask you, what are you in college for before you get to that?
I studied design, actually.
Design, like interior design or like graphic design?
No, it's right now, because it's a very complex answer because my college can like change it up. But I went into design to like make video games, like graphic design, I guess. Yeah. So like I take a lot of like drawing classes, and like I learned how to use Photoshop and that kind of thing. But a year into the future, like I guess I just would like to have a first draft
of a novel.
Yeah. Just like a first draft would be like great, so I can have something to work with, because I love to, because I love editing. Like sometimes writing kind of makes me stressed, but I love editing. Like I love reading and like fixing and like.
Really? So a lot of people, a lot of writers that I know, that's kind of like the worst part of it is the editing process. And so I try to find ways to make it faster, easier, better.
Exactly. Like one of my favorite things is like when I like write a chapter, I'll just like go back the next day, kind of like fix it up, because sometimes I'll just write and like not think about it, and like what I wrote just makes no sense, and like I love fixing. But like I'm a Virgo, so I'm very like I'm a perfectionist kind of, especially when it comes to my writing. Like I love like making things perfect. But
did you struggle with the deadline for the contest, having to get it ready and get it in, still wanting to make it perfect, but it's time's up?
I didn't actually, surprisingly, because I wrote it fairly quickly. Like what annoyed me was that the people I sent it to kind of like took a while to read it. Like I don't blame them, but I sent it to my friend and she's like, okay, I'll read it, and then she kind of like forgot about it, which like it's fine. Like I don't blame her at all. But it was kind of like a waiting, like feedback, like please. And then like she read it, it was like I'll find stuff, but like I struggle more with that, like waiting for people to read it and feedback. Like I was very anxious waiting for the results, actually, more than like me sending it in or like writing it. Yeah. So
well, it was really paid off. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your editing process like? Because if you're a perfectionist, are you just sort of rereading the chapter you just wrote line by line, trying to make it better? Or do you have a system at all?
No, I kind of just go by it, because eventually, like a lot of times, like I don't even write in order. So like I write like chapter 8 and then I write chapter 5, and then like I have chapter 8 to like add information that I added on chapter 5, and so I kind of like love that. Like a few first scenes that I wrote before, like I figured out like this major events needed to happen. So like none of them really make sense, and I kind of love like reading that, like figuring out like my thought process behind it. And I just kind of go by it like word by word. I just kind of fix it and like make it prettier too, because sometimes you're just writing and you don't really think about like style. And then I'm kind of like, okay, like that word, I use a synonym for that, so that
synonyms all day. Do you ever have a problem, because I know you said that you've submitted multiple stories to contests and magazines and things. Do you ever have a problem being a perfectionist, actually sort of saying, okay, this is done? Are you doing it because the deadlines help you kind of get it out the door, or do you actually find a place where you're satisfied with your stories and with your writing?
I usually like find a place I'm pretty satisfied with it. Like usually, like after a couple of months, like a year after, like I'll go back and read it. Like it could have been better, like I could have done it better, whatever. But
that's always going to happen, especially if you're consistently writing after that, because you're going to be improving. So anything that you look at from last year, you're going to go, well, I could do better now. So
but I kind of like like being able to stop and like be proud of it, because like I know like a year ago I was proud of it, so that means something to me. And like there's always something to like. There's always something good there, like I don't always write something like, oh no, it's complete garbage, like it sucks, I hate it, and like I'll delete it. Like I'll never delete things. I'm kind of just like trying to find a place else for them, or just kind of like improve them, like they are, but yeah, like I kind of, eventually I'll just reach a place and like, okay, like that's fine, it's done, like whatever. And then I'll go back a couple months later and just do
Yeah,
it again.
I understand. I understand doing that completely. What's the longest story that you've written? And I suppose I mean finished, in terms of like a short story that's finished, I guess, because you said you haven't written a full draft before, right?
Yeah, so I think it was like 3,000 words actually, because uh, like I don't want to turn this into like Reed C propaganda actually, but like I think Reed C is a great like place. So I mean like community, like alongside yours obviously, but with Reed C like the limit is 3,000 words, and I usually like I love participating in contests, like I because I love like making people give me an idea first. So I'll just off of that. But like, yeah, we'd see like the limit is 2,000, so I think probably
3,000 is kind of what you usually write to.
yeah, but like those, I'm searching for like other magazines and stuff for me to look it up, for me to like send work into, and most of the time the limit is like 5,000. So maybe I'll try that next. Maybe
Just keep upping it until all of a sudden you're going to be writing novels.
Exactly. That's the plan.
Going back to that earlier question of a year, what about 5 years? Because again, are you looking to be a novelist? Like, would your dream be like quit your design jobs and just write books full time if you could, or what is it that you'd like to see yourself achieve within 5 years?
No, yeah, I would love to be a full time author actually, but 5 years. Are we 25? I would like to publish a book by then, maybe. Like having like written a full series, like full like a trilogy or like I don't know, whatever many books, and like be querying for something. Like I love to be query for authors for agents, sorry, at one point. So maybe 25 I think is a good place to start querying, I think.
Have a novel written, be looking for representation and getting on the road to publishing.
Exactly. I think that's a
great answer. And so if you got to the point where because obviously, by 25, you're going to be finished with school, you're going to be starting your career, probably a couple of years into it. And if you then had the chance to quit your job and write full time, is that something that you'd be interested in doing? Or would you be trying to do both and balance both? What is it that you'd like?
I mean, I think it honestly depends. It's such a practical, boring answer, but like really like financial state, But I would love to be a full-time author if I could, like make a living off of this. Like I would love to like maybe I write a screenplay at this point. Who knows? Yeah. Like there's so much, like there's so many industries, like maybe I write a play, a musical. Like I don't do music, but maybe I write.
But you can learn it.
Exactly. Like I can do whatever I want, like that's the beauty of it. Like I love, artistic fields because of that. Like, like I could be like I'm studying design right now to like study to make video games, but also I could also like be on the writing aspect of making video games. I can make up stories and like character design.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like animation.
And video games especially in like current times are really trending towards having full-fledged stories and being much more of a narrative than, there's not a side scroll or platformer, just jump on the bad guys anymore. They're almost like movies in a lot of ways that you play through. So they'd be looking for people like that.
Yeah. Like I love character design too. So like if I do like end up going into like video games, I love to work as a character designer. Like not even maybe drawing too. I'm not very good at drawing actually, but like maybe drawing like coming up with the stories for like the characters and backgrounds. Like I love that. So maybe it'll be.
That'd be very good, like melding of the two careers that you're sort of looking at.
Exactly. That's kind of why I get into it. Yeah.
I like that. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else that you want to say before we go? Anything you want to ask me or anything like that? I mean, we're going to talk about a couple of things after we end the interview here. But I mean, in terms of what we've been talking about, writing and things like that, is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody that might be watching this?
I mean, I just like to write, if they're into that, or maybe just like try to learn other skills too, because I think like kind of breaking off writing and kind of getting into other things like animation for a while kind of helped me like bring that kind of other kind of creativity into writing. So I think, having different hobbies is very good.
Get experience, synthesize it to your work.
Exactly, because I mean, also like I recommend if you're a writer, like reading outside of your preferred genre too. Like I think it helps a lot. Like like I love to write fantasy, but I also love literary fiction, and I think literary fiction gives you a great advice for how to write characters and like how to write really complex characters. So I kind of I always tell people to like read so many different genres. Like I love recommending books to friends. So like I recommend fantasy and like like a biography. If I have
so many recommendations, it's like what does Irene even read?
Exactly. No, I read so many different genres. So like I love like pushing that on people too. I'm like read everything. But yeah, like I want to thank you too, if I can, because I mean, this I have a really fun time, and I want to thank you for creating this contest and giving people opportunity.
I mean, it's my pleasure, and it's something that I love doing, and it's something that I think that is a worthy goal, a worthy mission, is to be giving people like yourself the experience to to make some real money and get published and actually get work out into the world. And I mean, hopefully, this gives you've already won contests. So I'm sure that you have the confidence to pursue your writing career, but I definitely encourage you to keep going. I loved your work. I love the story, and I'll certainly be following everything else that you do. Cheering you on with that first draft and getting that book published. I'll be reading it. So, and congratulations again on winning the contest. It's fantastic. Great. So I guess that's everything. So we'll say goodbye we're going to talk, but I'm going to be ending the call now. So thank you very much for joining us. And this was great to have this chat.